Welcome to Listen English Story. Here you will learn English in a fun and easy way through stories. Listening to stories helps you improve your vocabulary, understand grammar, and practice pronunciation. As you enjoy each story, you'll get better at speaking and understanding English. So, relax, listen, and learn English with us, one story at a time. Chapter 1. Dawn was on the phone with Dan saying, "I can't go on a date with you." She was spending the summer in Northern California, enjoying her break since college wouldn't start again until the next term. Even though she was having fun, she missed her friend Dan, who had gone to Nevada to take summer courses. Dawn knew Dan had liked her for a long time, but he never had the courage to ask her out until now, over the phone. "Yes, you can go on a date with me," Dan replied excitedly. Dawn lay on her bed, twisting her long dark hair around her finger, trying to think of an excuse. "My parents would kill me if I dated you," she said. "Why?" Dan asked. He was sitting in a park in Nevada, far away from her. He had met Dawn's parents before and knew they didn't like him. Dan had tattoos, earrings, and spiky blonde hair. His clothes were bold and a little wild, which clashed with Dawn's conservative family. They didn't like guys who looked like him. So, Dan already knew the reason. Instead of waiting for her answer, he asked, "Do you have to tell your parents?" "Of course I do. I don't keep secrets from them," Dawn said. "But you're an adult now," Dan argued. "Look, you're a nice guy, Dan," Dawn started to say, but he interrupted her. "I am. You're right. I'm a great guy. Your parents would love me if they knew me better. They'd adore me. Maybe, eventually, they'd like you," Dawn said. "Maybe not love or adore, but they'd think you're boyfriend material." "Or just don't tell them," Dan suggested. "I'm sorry, but you're being kind of old-fashioned." "What's wrong with that? I can't lie to my parents," Dawn said, sitting up in bed. "I won't." "It's not lying. Just don't tell them," Dan insisted. He watched a woman jog by with her dog. "If you don't say anything about me, that's not lying." "Yes, it is," Dawn argued. "It's a lie by omission." "Oh, you're using big words now," Dan said. "Omission. But if you don't say anything, that's not a lie." "Yes, it is," Dawn said, jokingly serious. "Anyway, omission isn't a big word." "Well, I'm failing English," Dan admitted. English wasn't his first language, so big words were hard for him. "So, it's a big word for me. If that's the case, then we're done," Dawn joked. "I can't date someone with a small vocabulary." "But you would date me otherwise," Dan teased. Dawn laughed. "Okay, you got me. Yes, I like you." "There, I said it. You said you liked me," Dan repeated, standing up from the park bench. "That's great, but that doesn't help me." "What do you mean?" Dawn hadn't expected that response. "Think about it. Now I know you like me, so why can't we date? It's frustrating." "Let me finish," Dawn said, getting up from her bed and pacing the room. "I'm just teasing you, Dan. I'll go out with you. When your classes are over and you come back to California, we can go on a date. But I do need to talk to my parents first." Dan felt happy hearing that. but he still found it strange that she had to talk to her parents. Why do you need to talk to them? Do you need their permission? No, not their permission, Dawn explained. But it's part of our culture. You know, my family isn't from America. We have different traditions. I know. My family is the same, Dan said. Yes, we're from another country. In our culture, we respect our parents. We include them in our daily lives, Dawn continued. That's not fair, Dan said. I respect my parents too. You do? Do you involve them in your daily life, Dan? Well, Dan hesitated. He didn't see his parents often. He was away from home and rarely visited them. He didn't ask for their advice much either, but he didn't want to tell Dawn that. I try to call them every week, he said. That's not the same thing, but it doesn't matter. When will your summer classes be over? Dawn asked. They're over next month. It's a short term. I'm only taking these classes to make up for last term. I didn't do well, Dan explained. Yes, I heard you failed 2 classes, Dawn said. But I know you're smart. You can do it. Thanks. I've been studying a lot. My teachers know I'm a good student, but all the classes are in English. That's why I struggle sometimes, Dan said. Dawn nodded, understanding. She had also struggled with classes last year until she got a tutor who helped her a lot. When you come back, I'll help you study English, Dawn offered. I'll teach you everything my tutor taught me. Really? That would help a lot, Dan said. But I need to do something first. What's that? Dawn asked. Before you can be my tutor, Dan said, smiling, I need to ask my parents. Very funny, Dawn replied, laughing. Just for that, I'm going to be a tough tutor. Chapter 2. Caprice loved talking on the phone, especially with her friends about their boyfriends. It was raining outside, and she was feeling bored. So, she decided to call her old friend, Dawn. Caprice had heard a rumor and wanted to find out if it was true. So, Dawn, Caprice began, Did you know Jack is in Nevada now? Really? Dawn replied, a little distracted. I remember your boyfriend Jack. He's cute. Very handsome. What's he doing out there? He's taking summer classes. And guess what? You'll never believe where he's going. You're right, Dawn said, sighing. She didn't like guessing games, and she was busy getting ready for work. She was laying out her clothes on the bed. Nevada is a big state. I don't know where Jack could be. He's at the same college as Dan, Caprice announced. Oh, that's interesting, Dawn said, still not sure why Caprice was bringing this up. I'm sure Jack and Dan will enjoy hanging out together. Do they know each other well? Caprice smiled. They know each other a little, but they're becoming friends. In fact, they've been talking a lot recently. So, Dawn, Dan told Jack that you two are dating. Ah, so that's what this call is about, Dawn thought. Well, I wouldn't say we're dating yet, Dawn said. But I did tell Dan we could date when he comes back to California. Come on, don't be shy. I'm your friend. Tell me everything. You know, I used to date Dan. We went out 2 years ago when we were freshmen. I remember that, Dawn said, though, to be honest, she didn't remember it very well. Caprice had dated a lot of guys. So, did you think you could keep this a secret from me? Dawn checked the time on her clock. She only had 20 minutes left to get dressed and head to work. There isn't much to tell, Caprice. And I'm kind of in a hurry. Just give me the main details, Caprice insisted. Okay. You were very persistent. Dan asked me to date him, but he didn't ask while he was here. He waited until he was in Nevada. Men, they have terrible timing, don't they? I remember Dan was always late for everything. Dawn didn't really want to think about Dan and Caprice dating, so she quickly changed the subject. What about you and Jack? He's such a nice guy. You two were together for a long time. Are you still dating? Not really, Caprice said quietly. She hadn't told anyone this yet. We actually broke up before he left for Nevada. Oh, I didn't know that. You never told me. I'm really sorry. So you don't see him anymore? We broke up on good terms. We're still friends, but how do I put this? Jack wasn't a great boyfriend. Dawn was surprised. Caprice was always picky about boyfriends, but she had been with Jack for months, which was longer than usual. Everyone thought they made a great couple. Dawn even thought Jack might be the one. Not a good boyfriend? What do you mean? What did he do? Dawn asked, now more interested, though she kept an eye on the clock. For starters, Jack likes to flirt with other women. Oh no, are you serious? Was he cheating on you? I don't think so. No, I'm sure he wasn't seeing anyone else, but I don't like my boyfriends even looking at other girls. Dawn shrugged. Boys will be boys. Looking doesn't mean anything. You never looked at someone else? Maybe I did, but Jack wasn't just looking. He was talking to them too. Flirting with them. Where? What? Where was he flirting with other women? Dawn asked. At the nightclub, where he works. Yes, he still works at Zara's, my mom's nightclub. He's a bartender. He serves drinks to pretty girls all night long. Dawn couldn't help but laugh. She covered her mouth, realizing Caprice might not find it funny. What's so funny? Caprice asked, sounding annoyed. Sorry, I just thought. Didn't you help him get that job? Caprice didn't like being reminded of that. Yeah, I did. If I could go back, I'd change that. Well, be fair, Caprice. Jack's job is to talk to customers. It's part of being a bartender. I guess so. You guess so? Come on, be reasonable. He has to talk to people at the bar. It's his job. He's not just talking. He's flirting. There's a big difference, Dawn. Don't be naive. I'm not being naive. You're being too picky. Maybe he's just being extra nice for tips. You know, bartenders make more money when they're friendly. He doesn't have to be that friendly. And anyway, you wouldn't like it if Dan was acting like that. You'd get jealous, wouldn't you? No, I don't think I'd care. And right now, it doesn't matter. I'm not even dating Dan yet. That's true. You're still single. So, if you're going to defend Jack, why don't you date him? And I'll take Dan. What? Are you crazy? Dawn asked, feeling frustrated. Look, I really have to go to work. I know you're joking, but that's not funny. You said you don't get jealous, so what's the problem? Caprice teased. Dan sighed. She grabbed a quick snack from the kitchen, realizing she'd have to eat on the go. We can talk about this later, Caprice. I really have to get going. Without waiting for a response, she hung up the phone and hurried out the door. Chapter 3. Dan was really excited because his summer classes were almost done. He was doing well and expected to get good grades. Good grades will help my GPA, he thought. Maybe I can even get a scholarship when I go back to my university in California. In just 2 weeks, he would be home. He was happy about that, especially because he could finally go on a date with Dawn. She had promised to go out with him when he got back. Dan had known Dawn for a long time, but never had the courage to ask her out. It had been easier to do it over the phone, especially since he wasn't there in person. In some ways, it still didn't feel real to him. Dating Dawn had been something he always dreamed of. And soon, it's actually going to happen, he thought. Just then, his phone rang. It was his friend, Jack. They had known each other for a while, but had never been very close until now. Both were attending the same summer school in Nevada, and they'd started hanging out. They often had lunch together and watched movies at night after finishing their studies, but Dan had noticed Jack always seemed a little down. Something seemed to be bothering him, and now Dan finally knew what it was. "Hey, Jack," Dan answered. "Dan, I need to talk to you." "That's funny. I was about to say the same thing," Dan said. "Oh," Jack replied, sounding a bit surprised. "Well, go ahead. What's up?" "Dawn told me you and Caprice broke up," Dan said. Jack was taken aback. He hadn't made the breakup with Caprice public. "Yeah, that's true," Jack admitted. "I didn't say anything because I hoped we might get back together." "That's what I wanted to talk about. I could tell something has been bothering you, but I wasn't sure what it was. I was worried about you." "Thanks, man, but I'm all right, really," Jack said. "Are you sure?" Dan asked. "Do you want to talk about it?" Jack sighed. "You know how women are," he said with a forced laugh. His breakup with Caprice still hurt. She thought I was flirting with other women, accusing me of trying to find a new girlfriend. Really? That doesn't sound like you at all. I mean, I didn't know you well before, but now I do. You're a nice guy." "Thanks," Jack replied, appreciating the support. "I wasn't flirting, at least not in the way Caprice thinks. She got it all wrong." "Then what happened?" Jack explained. "I was just being nice to my customers. You know, I work as a bartender at Zara's, and if you're friendly, you get bigger tips." Dan nodded. "Yeah, I get it. I used to be a waiter, and my tips were always better when I was friendly with the customers." "That's exactly it," Jack said, relieved to have someone understand. "I wasn't flirting, just trying to get bigger tips. Why can't Caprice see that?" "Hey, maybe you could talk to her for me?" Dan hesitated. "I don't think that's a good idea, Jack." "Why not?" "Well, there's something I need to tell you. It's not a big deal, but you should know I dated Caprice once too. It wasn't for long, and it was a while ago." Jack already knew Yeah, I remember. But so what? Caprice is great, but to be honest, she was jealous when we were together too. She was jealous with you? Jack was shocked. It seemed like he wasn't the first guy to go through this. Yeah, pretty much the same issue you're having now, Dan said. Jack felt better knowing he wasn't alone. Talking about it helped, but he remembered he had something to ask Dan as well. Hey, I almost forgot. Jack said, I wanted to ask you about something. Sure, what is it? It's about Dawn. You mentioned you're going to start dating her? Yeah, Dan said, feeling a little unsure about where this was going. I wanted to ask her out for a while, and finally I did, and she said yes. Yes, she wanted to talk to her parents first. That's what she told me. But why would she need to talk to her parents? I don't know. She just said she likes to keep them involved in her life. Doesn't that seem a little strange to you? No, not really. Maybe a little. Why are you asking about this? Well, because she comes to Zara's sometimes, Jack said, referring to the bar where he worked. Dan hadn't known that, but it didn't seem like a big deal. And I've talked to her a few times at the club, and well, I think she's really cute. I was thinking of asking her out, Jack admitted. Dan was stunned. What? Are you serious? Listen, Jack quickly added, I'm not going to. I know she agreed to go out with you. I just wanted to make sure because, you know, I don't have a girlfriend anymore since Caprice and I broke up, so I thought about Dawn. Dan was still shocked, but he managed to reply. Well, too late. I asked her first. You'll just have to work things out with Caprice. Thank you so much for listening till the end. Your time and attention mean the world to me. I hope you enjoyed the story and found it helpful in improving your English skills. Keep practicing and don't forget to join me again for more fun stories and learning. Have a great day.